everyone, Tony D with a hot take about the big news story of today, Kenosha, Wisconsin. So let me go over just briefly what happened. This is my interpretation of it, reading the news. It's just my opinion. So it's not, I don't have all the information. No one does yet, but this is basically what happened. So there's a guy by the name of Jacob Blake. There was a bench warrant out for his arrest for a few things. He apparently showed up to the place of either one of his exes or girlfriends or ex-wives or baby mamas. No one's really sure. Anyhow, she calls the cops, I believe. Someone does. The cops show up. He's there, and he's out of his car. And in his car are some of his kids. I think he had 3 kids with him. The cops probably ran a check or realized who he was and set out to arrest him. And I think there's like 3 or 4 cops present. So they're aiming guns at him now. And you can see the video online if you look it up. He just sort of turns his back on him and is like, meh, I'm going to walk to my car. So he heads to his car and he grabs the door, and the cops are shouting at him. They're pointing their guns, and he's just ignoring them. So he gets the door open, tries to go in. One of the cops grabs him, tries to pull him out. He pulls away, and at that point, he's trying to get into his car. At that point, the cops shoot him. Now they shoot him 7 times. Now you could hear that and say, "Oh my God, they shot him 7 times, and they shot him in the back." You say, "Oh my God, that's horrible." It is horrible. He lived. Which is good. But the thing is, if they had just let him get in the car, cars are considered lethal weapons. He could have run the cops over. He also had his kids with him. They could not let him leave with his kids. Now, the way I interpret this is a domestic squabble that's spiraling out of control, mostly probably because of him. It sounds to me that his ex is either having problems with him showing up and harassing her, or she's using the cops to harass him. I mean, we don't know yet. But either way, he is clearly angry, so angry that he's willing to ignore the cops and try to get away from them. You can't just this isn't racial, because anybody who had done that, the cops would have shot. And when you shoot somebody as a police officer, the first thing you do is you aim for the body mass, which is the torso. And second, you try to kill them. You don't point a gun at somebody unless you tend to kill them. He's just lucky that he lived. Now you might say, why'd they shoot him 7 times? Look, you don't know a guy's on drugs and, he's pretty agitated and pumped up. When you shoot somebody, they don't always go right down. So, it's sort of like, bang, 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 bang. It's that kind of thing. And it wasn't just one cop, it was multiple cops. And they were all amped up because he wasn't listening. And this guy apparently has a bit of a history. They probably knew that going in there. And who knows what happened before the moments of the video. Now, it doesn't look nearly as bad as the George Floyd thing, but because it looks pretty justified to me. I mean, from what I've seen, it's sad that he got shot, but really, if he had listened to the cops, what would have happened? Well, he would have been arrested. He would have been taken down to the station, and he probably would have been released on bail or whatever. I mean, maybe not, because he did have a bench warrant. He did blow off a court appearance. But currently, people are being let out of jail because they don't want to fill the jails because of the beer virus. So it's likely he would have gotten out and given another summons. They probably would have given him a second chance if he was cooperative, but he wasn't. And it looks like he was kind of up to the same sort of activities that got him the bench warrant in the first place. Maybe. Again, I don't have all the facts, but I'm just speculating. So, Kenosha went nuts. The entire area went cuckoo bananas, and they started rioting and lighting fires, the locals, and in particular, they threw a flare into a used car lot. It ignited one of the cars and basically burned down the entire dealership. And then there was this ironic image of a sign of the next door Unitarian Church, which had put up Black Lives Matter, and a raging fire behind it at that angle. So this isn't helping the situation, of course. And then further rioting footage, real scary. This one I do not recommend you Google, but there was a bunch of cops, and people are circling in. It looks pretty ominous. They start throwing stuff at the cops. One of the cops gets hit by a brick. Boom, goes right down. I mean, he goes out like a light, like a sack of potatoes hits the ground. I'm so sorry I watched it because it's horrific. But it was on Twitter. They didn't really describe what was going to happen. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have watched it. I don't like to see things that are too violent, especially if they're real. But, people went nuts. There was also a guy who apparently took some shots at a cop. There were armed people. They're trying to get people to pick up arms against the cops. Here's the thing. You want law and order. Doesn't matter who you are. Now, if you say there's problems with the cops, okay. I think there are. I think there's room to discuss things. This is not the way to do it. If you tear down the whole system, what you'll get is barbarism for a long time. Because once you descend into barbarism, once you descend into warlords and whoever has the guns is in control, the people who take control like that, they're not going to give it up. Not easily. You're going to have to fight them every inch of the way. You're going to be fighting local warlords one at a time until you eliminate them all and then retake everything. So a lot of people will die in that time period of your rebuilding after you tear it all down. So that is not an option. It's not an option, and it's not going to happen. So don't get crazy here. The revolution's not here. It's not happening. But what is happening is idiots who are falling into this trap of, oh, well, I don't have to listen to the cops anymore, or we're having a revolution, so it's time to get out there. All that stuff is BS. You're just being sucked in by the current trend, which ends this November. After this November, it all ends. One way or another. Either the Democrats win and they go, shut it down. Or Trump wins and he goes, here's my plan to shut it all down. It may even end before that, because the word I heard from some of the videos about this is that Antifa figures from Portland got to Kenosha. Those guys are in trouble. Idiots, you cross state lines. So now the FBI is coming. And they're probably watching you every step of the way, building their case again and again and again and again. You're going to get slammed for that. And you're going to get slammed for Portland and every little thing you do along the way. They're watching you, and you morons videotape everything. They're going to get you. And they got guys on the inside, and they're recording it too. And even if they don't, well, one of your guys will crack because he doesn't want to go to jail for the rest of his life. He'll go, I'll tell you everything you want to know. I don't know why I joined these guys. I just hated Donald Trump. It's all gonna be wrapped up. And people are going to jail. Lots of people. The FBI loves this. This is what they live for. These are actual criminals. See, during the Bush era, they hardly could find any terrorists because they weren't really here, right? And these homegrown guys were just mentally ill people who would get caught up in the nonsense of ISIS and go, oh, I'm going to do that, or Al-Qaeda or whatever, and they'd run out and try to do something as if like the whole country was going to collapse. That didn't happen. And a few years later, it was all over, and nobody remembers those people. They're in jail, or they ruined their lives, or most of them are in jail. The only difference this time is a lot more people are going to jail, which is okay because the Democrats emptied the jail, so we're going to fill them all back up again, this time with actual criminals who actually did things. Because rioting in the streets and burning down a dealership and assaulting people and throwing bricks and, come on, Dougie, doing all these horrible things, They're crimes. They're crimes. So, doggy knows. So, if you're in Antifa, it's getting very late in the game to quit, but there's still time to quit. If you quit now, maybe they don't come after you. Maybe you quit and you just stop doing what you're doing. You go live your life, get a job, go someplace where they're not doing all this nonsense, get away from all these communist agitators. And it all dies down. They never get to your name on the list because, this guy's out in the middle of nowhere. He's harmless. We don't need to pick him up over a couple of things. The other guys are going to go after. And part of the problem is, too, even if you do that, if you end up being on the list of names that the guy they sweated gives up, well, you could be dragged back into it. They could put out you could end up becoming one of those 60s fugitives that we hear about. You ain't getting pardoned. Nah. No pardon for you. No president's going to pardon Antifa. Joe Biden's not pardoning Antifa. Joe Biden gets elected, you better run for the damn hills because Joe Biden has to get rid of you. Trump wants to get rid of you. Joe Biden has to. Joe Biden has to prove to everybody he's tougher than Trump. He will go after you hammer and tongs. He'll want you dead. He'll want you dead so there's no trial, so there's no long thing dragged out. And look, these guys have connections in that way. And when you look at the stats and you see that Trump's just rising, and Biden, the Democrats keep tumbling down the stairs like a kid with an inner ear infection, you realize maybe Trump already has the keys to the deep state. Maybe he's running the show behind the scenes. Maybe all this is part of his plan. He's trying to wipe out the Democrats. I don't think that's the case. I think the Democrats are wiping themselves out. Their plan is, and always kind of has been, cause a bunch of problems when you're not in office and then come in and solve them all. And solve them all with money. Just buy your way in. Buy your way in and buy your way out. And, which is a shame because back in the day, when I was a kid, progressives had an agenda to help people. Now they don't do that anymore. Now it's just they're hanging on by the skin of their teeth, hoping and praying that Donald Trump blows this somehow, or that they could do enough damage so that by 2024 they could say, see, the Republicans didn't fix anything. Anyhow, let's get into it in the next video with some solutions. Right, Joan? Yes.